Hello, I'm Sonia Broomfield, and this is number 0769, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0769. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, Scott Overton is back on the show. He's the author of the sci-fi novel Oceanus, which deals with the investigation of a downed flight into the ocean, the cause of which could be environmental or aliens.
In Oceanus, this is a case where, maybe the planet or some part of the planet is fighting back, but really no one knows. And that's part of the big part of the book. Plot-wise, an expedition goes down to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean to find out what caused this blast of unknown energy that basically took out all the passengers and crew of an airliner passing overhead. So they don't really know what's down there. Is it aliens, extraterrestrials, or is it some life form from Earth that we don't know, or the planet fighting back?
Lisa Sweasy is the curator of the Vent Haven Museum, which is a museum that features ventriloquist dummies.
The museum started as a private collection by a man named William Shakespeare Berger, who lived from 1878 to 1972. He was an amateur ventriloquist, but not a professional one, and he just had a real love of the art form, so he started collecting dummies and puppets and ephemera and posters, recordings, scripts, everything you can imagine. And he spent 40 years of his life amassing this huge collection.
Marc Hartzman, curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back for the Weird Story for the month of May. This one deals with the first person who pushed a peanut up a mountain with their nose.
This happened 95 years ago this month, so May of 1929. It's a pretty amazing feat to pull off with your nose. The guy's name was Bill Williams, and he accepted a bet for $500 from a group of his neighbors. And the bet was, could he push a peanut 22 miles up Pikes Peak? And Pikes Peak is a 14,115-foot mountain. He was given 22 days to achieve this feat. And that $500 he was going to get in 1929, that was hardly peanuts. That was a pretty good payday. And again, that was right before the stock market crashed, so I'm sure that came in handy.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater. The person who told you this was show number 0769 was Sonia Bloomfield, who does on-air and venue graphics for Major League Sports. And she was somebody I used to work with back in my old television days as well. Thank you very much, Sonia, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. The Los Angeles Dodgers were in Phoenix, Arizona to play the Arizona Diamondbacks, but one of the games was delayed, and it certainly was a buzzkill. On April the 30th, it took over an hour for Matt Hilton to arrive to clear the issue. Hilton, branch manager of Blue Sky Pest Control's Phoenix office, arrived in a scissor lift, with fans cheering him on as he was lifted up to the top of the protective netting behind home plate to clear the bee colony swarming there. As the song Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler played over the loudspeakers, Hilton, dressed in his beekeeper gear, sprayed the bees to stun them and then suck them up with a vacuum. The game was finally able to start 2 hours late, and the Diamondbacks asked Hilton, still in his beekeeper's outfit, to throw out the first pitch. You know, the D-backs have a really good pitching rotation this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Oakland A's might give Hilton a call after his performance. Their pitching really sucks, and it's nothing to buzz about. George Sandoval was arrested on May the 2nd at a Subway restaurant in Madeira, California, after he assaulted the store's manager. Monique Larios said she was called in to the store after a customer complained that there wasn't enough ham on his sandwich. Said Larios, "I did not expect this. He comes around the corner and I go, 'What are you going to do? Hit me over ham?' And he hit me. I still can't feel half my face. I'm 4'2", and this guy is 6'5", almost 400 pounds." Sandoval was charged with battery. Yeah, he's not going to like the food portion control that they have in prison. You know when someone tries to do something nice, but they do it in a boneheaded way? This is such a story. When Rhonda Deaver realized she had left her credit card at Smith's Cafe in Kinston, North Carolina in early May, she turned around and headed back to get it. Unfortunately, a Smith's employee was right on top of things and posted the front and back of Deaver's card to a Kinston Facebook group with all the numbers visible. Deaver's family got in touch with her when they saw the post, but it was too late. More than $2,000 in charges had already hit her account. Said Deaver, "I couldn't believe they did that, but I might be responsible for all those charges. There were a whole lot of declines, but a whole lot went through." She's still disputing the charges. The Smith Cafe's owner, by the way, had no comment. Yeah, they're probably not going to get tips in the future either. Putting the back and front of someone's credit card up on Facebook is a pin-headed move, even without a PIN number. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, under the heading of, "Was this study really necessary?" Data and tech company Numerator reported the results of their study of nearly 6,000 cannabis users. The conclusion: people who consume cannabis spend more of their grocery money on snacks and beverages.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
According to Numerator, daily THC users have even more pronounced spikes in almost every category studied, with notable differences from regular THC users in candy, herbs and spices, frozen potato snacks, and packaged sweet snacks. They also found that THC users are more likely to have visited a limited service restaurant or used a food delivery app, with DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Little Caesars pizza being the most popular. Numerator goes on to say these behaviors are even more pronounced among daily THC users. You know, I'm beginning to get the feeling that the person who decided to spend money on this study was probably high.
Trust me, you are high. Way too high.
Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Scott Overton is back on the show again. We had him on just in January talking about his science fiction novel, Indigent Earth. Well, he has another sci-fi title out. This one is called Oceanus. Scott joins us via Zoom from Sudbury, Ontario. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Peter, and thank you for having me back. It's great to be back with you.
Thanks for being on the program with us once again. One of the things I've noticed about your science fiction stories, and I'm going back to previous science fiction stories of the genre when we were growing up, it was always a situation in science fiction where it was man against aliens, and aliens were the Avengers. They were the evil ones, and we were fearing what aliens could do. I'm looking at your last book, Indigent Earth, and also this current book. It seems to be that with your stories, the planet is in peril, but we are the villains.
Well, there's some truth in that. Is anybody going to really deny that we've been abusing our planet? I don't think so nowadays. Or a few fringe people. Don't get mad at me, but I think that's the case. So that is true. That's a theme in the past couple of books. Not always in all my books, but I think we can't really deny it. And in Oceanus, this is a case where, maybe the planet or some part of the planet is fighting back, but really no one knows. And that's part of the big part of the book. plot-wise, an expedition goes down to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean to find out what caused this blast of unknown energy that basically took out all the passengers and crew of an airliner passing overhead. So they don't really know what's down there. Is it aliens, extraterrestrials, or is it some life form from Earth that we don't know? Or the planet fighting back, you know?
Now, I understand that aliens are involved in this story in that they could be our saviors.
Well, there's one main character who is a troubleshooter kind of character. I think MacGyver, without quite as much gadgetry and everything, he hires out that way. And he believes that maybe aliens did create this blast of energy because nobody knows what it was, but accidentally wouldn't have been, meaning it as a hostile act. And he's happy about the idea of advanced extraterrestrials coming to Earth because he thinks they might solve our problems, the way we've messed up many, many things. So in that sense, yeah, could they be saviors? Of course, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Now, your last book, Indigent Earth, was set in the future at a time when people had gone to another location to basically get away from the problems that the Earth has in the hopes that they would return, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the rich and powerful in indigent Earth have left 500 years earlier to go live in these space colonies out about the same distance as the moon. And then they have vowed they would come back in 500 years, given that the Earth might have healed a bit by then. And they do. And that's when the story is set. But this one is not anywhere near that far in the future. It's a couple of decades in the future at best.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. And that what time frame is it in? And should should we all be worried?
It's just in the 19, boy, but that dates me, 2040s. And so some of the technology, for instance, the jetliner involved is one that's flying today. And that kind of thing can happen. So the technology, there is advanced technology in the sense of a prototype undersea habitat that this team of specialists will take to the bottom of the ocean to find out what's been causing this, what caused this energy blast or whatever is down there. And also a nanotechnology in the suits that they use against the incredible pressure down there, but not super, super advanced far future things.
What was the genesis, the seed in creating this particular story?
Well, there have been some really good science fiction movies. Think of The Abyss or Sphere that take us to the bottom of the ocean. The bottom of the ocean there, especially in those depths, is the least explored part of our planet. And it's a great natural realm for drama and suspense and danger and all of that. And there haven't been that many books. I mean, Sphere came from a book by Michael Crichton. There is a book series called the Rifter series by a guy named Peter Watts. And I can't think of too many others that actually go down there, of any prominence at least. And I thought that's a great place to take the story. I don't go out into space all that much, but I wanted to explore a different realm. And of course, the element of the pollution of the oceans and climate change and all of those could enter into it. But it's just that natural setting for a lot of drama.
It's interesting that in just exploration itself, we seem to be spending a lot of time, and I'm not complaining in any way, shape, or form, but we seem to be spending a lot of time with space and not a lot of time in the ocean's depths. And you just said that we also don't write about it fictionally. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, really, we thought for a long time that the ocean depths were just complete deserts. There was nothing there, which isn't true. There is life there. But the depths are absolutely crushing depths. And this was another misconception that scientists have always had, that all life on Earth had to depend on the sun's energy for its existence, for its survival. And it turned out not to be true. In the late 70s, scientists discovered these things called hydrothermal vents. They're like geysers in the bottom of the ocean, in the ocean floor. But what they didn't expect when they finally went to see them with robotic vehicles and then submersibles is there's a whole community of life around each of these things, and all kinds of, shrimp and tube worms and many, many things that have no dependence on sunlight. Sunlight does not get there. They depend on chemical energy from the chemicals that are spewing up from the crust of the earth through these hydrothermal vents. So that was a complete turnaround to a major assumption of science.
How much research did you have to do in order to write Oceanus?
I did quite a lot, and I do a lot of research, but I try not to, overwhelm the reader with scientific details. If they're a science fiction reader, they won't even notice it with this one. If they're not a science fiction reader, they may think, oh, okay, this is a bit technical here and there. But I actually had to find a place. This is an interesting bit of research. I had to, using Google Earth and Google Maps, had to find a real place on the ocean floor in the South Pacific that would meet the requirements of my story. And that involved really the passage of the moon, the tracking of the moon overhead and stuff like that, because they kind of figure this message is eventually they figure this message may be related in a line with the moon. What's going on there? So, yeah, that was part of the research. But the nanotechnology, the pressure, how you communicate in those situations, what kind of energy can transmit or transfer through that much water, all of those things I had to dig into pretty deeply.
It's interesting that you had to create this plot, but then you went about doing the research to find the location. What if you hadn't found the location? Would you have to change the plot?
Oh my gosh, I hope not. I was able to basically find a place that had ridges on the ocean floor, because Google Earth can actually show the topography of the ocean floor. And I had to find a place that was like a valley between a couple of ridges, so that at certain times the moon would not be visible, quote unquote. Of course, it wouldn't be visible anyway, because it's down at the bottom of the ocean through all these, miles of water. But lined up in a straight line kind of thing. It wouldn't be accessible in a straight line of transmission from the ocean floor. That's what I had to figure out. I would have found it somewhere.
What is it like when you sit down and decide, which comes first, actually? Does an idea come to you, or do you sit down and think, I'm going to write a story, what's it going to be about? Or does this situation hit you like a lightning bolt? When you say, I know what I'm going to write about because I'm interested in this particular item.
Well, I do start with ideas and concepts, either a concept or a theme that I want to explore, and usually both, and find some way that they mesh together. And then I will work on the best characters to fulfill that theme and exemplify that theme, and a plot that'll make it all work. So that's kind of the process that I follow. With Oceanus, it was, again, I wanted to take something to the deep ocean. I also wanted to explore that theme of the ocean pollution and abuse of the earth in that sense. And also the fact that we tend to underestimate as human beings the intelligence of every other creature out there. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's dolphins, whales, mammals of other kinds, or possibly, extraterrestrials. We just generally don't allow for any other kind of living being, form of life, to have an intelligence, because we may not see them thinking the way we do. They don't think the way we do, then doesn't matter. They don't count. So I wanted to explore that a bit.
So when you come up with a story, like in this case, do you come up with the plot line that you want to do and then come up with the protagonist, in this case, Alex? Or do you mold the protagonist and fit it into a storyline?
Well, very often it is a character who can exemplify these things. Alex believes that extraterrestrials will be great when they come to our planet and they will save us. And so that has to be part of his character and eventually exemplify or work out some of the theme, illustrate the theme. The other main character is a reluctant telepath named Elle, and there's some element of that she can help enable the plot, because how do you communicate with a totally alien form of life, whatever that might be? So those kinds of things are how it works, but it depends. One writer that I know well has often used the Planet of the Apes analogy for stories. You get a theme of about humans and monkeys or apes or whatever. And if you're wanting to actually say humans are valuable, humans are worthwhile, which is kind of the end message in spite of our faults, you get a character who's in the beginning of that movie ragging on the human race and saying what a horrible species we are and blah blah blah. The Charlton Heston character in Planet of the Apes. That's what I'm saying about finding a character or making a character that can illustrate your theme.
Well, I know I asked you this question before when we had you on the program the last time, and I usually ask a lot of authors this very question. You just brought up movies. You brought up Planet of the Apes. Would you like to see this Oceanus turned into a film or television series or a miniseries?
I've been asked about that, and I think that a TV series or even a mini series might get too talky. The book has a lot of discussion about different things because they're various, very bright, genius level characters, and they're discussing all the issues involved in what they're looking for down there, whatever it might be. And so it might get a little bit talky. I think it'd make a great movie. And we've certainly seen from movies like The Abyss and Sphere that they could film those and make them very believable, incredible, authentic, special effects and everything. So I think that'd be great. Yeah, it would make a good movie.
Maybe you should get in contact with James Cameron. He does a lot of work with water.
Exactly. James Cameron, if you're listening now, get in touch. Love to hear from you.
Scott, it's always fun to hear from you. Thank you very much for you sharing this story again and being on the program with us once again to talk about it. This one, of course, is called Oceanus, and it's out now. Thanks for being on the show once again, sir.
I'm always happy to be invited. Invite me back anytime you like, Peter. It's a great time.
Scott Overton, author of Oceanus. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0769, and you'll find the links to Scott's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram. Here's a penny for your thoughts from the Stuff File program, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, a country that doesn't have pennies.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk about a museum for dummies, ventriloquist dummies. Plus, Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a weird story for the month of May. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way and much more Stuff File news right here, right now. Now, I'm trying to come up with the right headline for this next story because a headline should give you a clear idea of what the story is about. So, let me see. How about Kansas man gets DUI? No, that's a little vague. How about Kansas mayor gets DUI? Well, that's somewhat better. How about Kansas mayor gets DUI after driving through the front door of a liquor store? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Here's a bonus subheadline. Mayor claims his brakes failed. Yeah, that paints the picture. Here's the story. Manhattan, Kansas Mayor Win Butler was arrested last week on suspicion of DUI after crashing his vehicle into a storefront. The incident happened at around 8 p.m. at the Candlewood Liquor Store in the Candlewood Shopping Center. Butler confirmed to local media that his brakes failed, but also admitted to having had 4 beers earlier in the evening. He has submitted his resignation from the city commission effective immediately. Store owner Mike Irvin says he and his wife Lisa were not present at the time of the crash and were called to the store by an employee. No injuries have been reported. You know, most liquor stores, for obvious reasons, are not drive-thrus. A Sackett's Harbor, New York man told police that he drove his vehicle onto the village's boat launch and then into the lake at about 2 a.m. while following GPS instructions. State police said 26-year-old Jake R. Cahoe was driving west on West Main Street when his GPS told him to make a right turn.
Yeah, make a right turn here. What could possibly go wrong?
Troopers said that he failed to see the boat launch and drove into the lake. No injuries were reported. Cahoe was given citations for operating a motor vehicle without a driver's license, leaving the scene of a property damage accident, and leaving a motor vehicle unattended. A car in the lake, is that really unattended, though? Anyway, state police responded with Sackett's Harbor Fire Department and a local service center to help get the vehicle out of the water. Well, I bet that old Jake won't be trusting his GPS again.
Recalculating while you reverse out of the lake.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, an unexpected finding led police to identify and later apprehend the person who allegedly burglarized a home in suburban Cook County, Illinois. 35-year-old Jeremiah Phillips was charged with burglary, residential burglary, and criminal damage to property in connection with the September 2023 burglary. On September the 6th of last year, deputies were called regarding a residential burglary. Detectives reviewed security footage which showed the man go inside the home's detached garage and open the fridge. He then took a drink from a bottle of 19 Crimes Cali red wine before putting it back in the fridge. Wait a minute. 19 Crimes Cali red wine. Isn't that the label created by Snoop Dogg? What's he doing making a wine anyway?
I live infamously. I don't care what other people think. My success, that's me. My legacy, that's defined by me.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, sometime after Phillips put the bottle back in the fridge, he spotted the security cameras and spray painted them with paint he found in the garage. Footage captured a few days later showed him returning to the home, enter through the sliding door, and damaging security equipment. Detectives later had the wine bottle tested for DNA. Then in February, law enforcement got the results showing that the DNA found on the wine bottle matched to Phillips. He was taken into custody last week. You know, putting the wine bottle back in the fridge just before you suddenly realize that there are security cameras there, that's a rookie move. You'd think the general public, including criminals, would have learned something from watching years of CSI. I hope Phillips enjoyed the wine, although he'll never be able to live up to Snoop Dogg's tagline.
That's the taste of redemption. 19 Crimes, Cali red wine.
Bottoms up. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Lisa Sweasy is the curator of the Vent Haven Museum. It's a unique location housing more than 1,100 dummies used by ventriloquists dating from the 19th century to present day. It's the world's only museum dedicated to ventriloquism. You'll find it in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, which is where Lisa is joining us via Zoom. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, how are you doing? It's nice to speak with you, Peter.
Nice to have you on the program as well. Now, when did this all start? I understand it opened in around 1973?
That's right. That's when the public opening was. The museum started as a private collection by a man named William Shakespeare Berger, who lived from 1878 to 1972. He was an amateur ventriloquist, but not a professional one. And he just had a real love of the art form. So he started collecting dummies and puppets and ephemera and posters, recordings, scripts, everything you can imagine. Started collecting in earnest in 1932, and he spent 40 years of his life amassing this huge collection. About 10 years before he died, he made it into a nonprofit organization, so it's been a nonprofit since 1961, and it's been open to the public since 1973.
Okay, so again, it was open to the public only after his death, so what facilitated that all taking place?
Well, he would have people come through. Majority of those people, of course, were ventriloquists while he was alive. you're thinking about what was available as far as promotion goes. He was a bigwig in the ventriloquism circles, but there was really no way of advertising that would be, cost effective. So he would have, the neighbors would come through and they'd bring their family and things like that, but it just wasn't really treated like a roadside attraction at that point. He would have to know the person directly for them to come through. So when he passed in 72, it had already been decided that it would become a tourist attraction. So the first curator who moved in 73, she was the one that began giving public tours.
Now, I understand that Fort Mitchell, Kentucky is about 5 miles from Cincinnati, so it's near a major metropolitan center. How busy is the Vent Haven Museum?
Well, I am very busy, actually. I've given 2 tours so far today. I take groups through 5 days a week. I'm usually closed on Mondays and Thursdays, and I'm booked up almost solid the rest of the time. So we have the tourists who come through. That makes up a huge population. And then we also have an annual convention every July since 1975, and that brings ventriloquists from around the world. I also do, we have open houses and things like that, but it stays pretty busy here.
Now, the art of ventriloquism has ebbs and flows when it comes to its popularity. Right about now, thanks to some shows like America's Got Talent and other shows like that, we're seeing more and more ventriloquists and more ventriloquism. I'm just wondering, when the ebb and flow takes place of the genre as a whole, do you see an effect of that in the amount of people who come?
I certainly think that public awareness does drive traffic to any kind of facility or museum or attraction. In my particular situation, I started working here at Vent Haven in 2000, and that was before, of course, any social media, anything like that. And it was before Jeff Dunham's career really blew up. I mean, he's a huge name in ventriloquism now, and he's well known. So his popularity absolutely drove traffic here as that increased and has increased. The other thing that's really brought ventriloquism, I think, to the public awareness has been the America's Got Talent, like you said, particularly with children. When Darcy Lynn won that show as a 12-year-old 6 years ago, the number of visitors I had who were, under 15 or 16 years old just really quadrupled. It's been phenomenal to watch how the one leads the other. Prior to those two things happening, my tourism was less. It was word of mouth, and it was just people who were really scouring the internet for the one-off thing to do. Whereas now it's a lot more difficult for me to fit everyone in.
I mentioned that you have more than 1,100 dummies. How many do you have in total, and is it always increasing? And if it is increasing, do you sometimes replace newer ones with ones that, for lack of a better term, aren't as popular or as complete as newer ones you're getting?
For today, the collection is, I believe the latest number is 1,189, and I just got one dropped off 2 days ago, so he'll join the collection. It is a constantly growing collection. The number that are out new this year that are new to the collection, they're not new pieces, but they're new to the collection. I believe I have 68 new pieces that tourists will see this year. Usually the collection grows by a couple of dozen pieces every year. And so we've had to implement a rotation policy. So everything that is donated, it does get its first year here on display. And then after that, it depends on what the themes are for whatever the latest exhibits that I'm putting together on, what those themes are. Like this year, I'm doing an exhibit on Punch and Judy, for example. So those pieces are out, whereas they might not be out if it weren't for that special exhibit. And the other thing I do is I try to follow the American Museum standards, which is, to have things rotate on and off exhibit. So usually visitors see about 700, 750 of the dummies and puppets, and then the balance are off exhibit, and then I'll switch out about 100 every year.
Now, I understand that you have some replica figures that were used by Edgar Bergen and Paul Winchell and Sherry Lewis, but you have authentic performance pieces by the likes of Willie Tyler, Jay Johnson, who people might remember on Soap, Terry Fader, and Jeff Dunham, and also Darcy Lynn, who you mentioned earlier.
Yes, the majority of the collection, 99% of the collection, are not replicas. They are the performance pieces that the person used. For example, we do have an authentic lamb chop here from Sherry Lewis that Mallory Lewis has lent us, so that's really nice. With regard to Charlie and Mortimer, those are replicas. Edgar Bergen had decided to donate Charlie and Mortimer to the Smithsonian, so that's where they are, and I believe that's where Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith are too, Paul Winchell's dummies. But yeah, everything is, Willie Tyler's items are, we have his first Lester. Now, he still has the Lester that most people would recognize because he's still using it. But then, Jeff Dunham's pieces, all of our pieces from him are performance pieces that he retired and then made new ones of. Darcy Lynn's Petunia is here. Now, one of the things I think the misconceptions about it is that everything is necessarily one of a kind. But it's being a ventriloquist is a lot like being a musician, where if you play guitar, you might have a favorite guitar, but you're going to have more than one guitar. So, for example, with Darcy Lynn's Petunia, we have one, but so does she. So they're identical, and they could be switched out for each other, and they were switched out for each other. But you would never go into a situation being unprepared for a disaster as an entertainer.
Absolutely. Now, I understand that you have coming up an event called the Dummy Run. It's taking place on June 30th. Tell us about that.
So the Dummy Run, thank you for bringing it up. The Dummy Run was started as a fundraiser. We started a capital funds campaign in 2017 and to raise money for a new building. And one of the events that we developed at that time was a 5K that people can run or they can walk. It's really lovely. The whole thing is set in our residential area. It's a beautiful community to run or walk through. And we just have a lot of fun with it. So it's called the Dummy Run. And in your registration packet, you get a photo of the dummy that you're running for. And so if you win in your division, then your little dummy holds a tiny little trophy. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great fundraiser, but more than that, even, it's great community outreach, and everybody has a blast.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're getting a lot of younger people showing up, especially after Darcy Lynn's success on TV. So based on that alone, when people come to the museum, besides taking a look at the plethora of dummies that you have available for them to take a look at and view, is there anything as far as an educational or instructive process that, for instance, kids who think they might want to become ventriloquists can partake in?
Absolutely. We definitely have education as part of our mission. And when people come here, they can take one lesson in ventriloquism. I teach them how to do one little sound and how it's all working mechanically. I'm not a ventriloquist, but I give a single lesson. They see some dummies demonstrated, a variety of them actually, some that are very simple hand puppets all the way up to some very, very complex dummies. So they learn about the types of dummies and puppets that are out there, and it kind of helps them become familiar with options. Then we also promote our convention that we have every July. That is the absolute best place to meet other ventriloquists and to learn and grow as a ventriloquist. We do have usually, it's several hundred people, 400 to 500 people from about a dozen countries that come every year. And especially since Darcy Lynn won America's Got Talent, the number of young people who come has grown substantially. And so we offer a course during our convention called Junior Vent University, where it's just beginner kids who get one-on-one coaching from professional ventriloquists. So it's a great opportunity if they're just getting their feet wet in that. And they also have an opportunity to do open mic if they want to at the convention.
Excellent. Now, when it comes to the museum itself, is it something that is by appointment or people can walk in? How does one go to the museum? Do you need reservations?
So the museum is open from May 1st through September 30th. And yes, everybody who wants to come pre-registers. So I am the only employee of the museum, and so we have a very structured way of coming in. But they can go to the website venthaven.org, and then they can click visit, and they will, through a series of clicks, you'll get to the schedule, the whole calendar for the touring season, and they can register for any of the tours that are available. Typically, I do 2 tours a day, sometimes 3. And all of those options are on the website, so they can pick what they want out of all of the options available.
I'm looking at a picture which has a lot of the dummies sitting down and basically looking at the camera. Does that ever creep people out when they walk into a room and they see all these eyes, like, looking back at them?
Right. There's definitely that real reaction that people have, kind of an uncanny valley response. That is super common, and I deal with it all the time. And so what I try to do is I help people try to decode that, because when you really start to analyze that, why is that happening? And so it's very common. For a lot of people, their only exposure to ventriloquism is the scary movie, like Magic with Anthony Hopkins, or maybe a Twilight Zone episode or something like that, or Goosebumps or whatever. So I'm very used to, talking about that and the uncanny valley and how we respond to eye contact. And when your experience has been that you've always seen dummies and puppets animated, and there they are just sitting, that can be very off-putting, especially in the numbers that we have. So it's very common response, and most people, your brain gets saturated with it pretty quickly, and within 5 minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes, it's gone, and then people can kind of really get into the how and why of why that's happening.
Well, again, congratulations on the Vent Haven Museum. People can go to the website venthaven.org. Thank you very, very much, Lisa, for being on the program with us.
I really appreciate you having me, Peter. Thank you so much.
Lisa Sweasy, curator of the Vent Haven Museum. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0769, and you'll find links to the museum site, which includes information on visiting the museum and also information for the annual Dummy Run. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, My Interviews with 2 Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, My Interviews with 2 Men on the Moon and a Galaxy of Stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Coming to you from the outskirts of sanity, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
And still to come on the program, we'll share the weird story for the month of May. Plus, we have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, but I've got a few more Stuff File news stories right here, right now. Kira Enders of Defuniak Springs, Florida, presented a lottery ticket to the Florida Lottery with a $1 million claim. The ticket she turned in was ripped in half and taped back together. When Enders called to check on her claim, they asked her to meet and discuss the paperwork. Enders and her partner, Dakota Jones, met with Special Agent Richard Pisanti, who was investigating the ticket. According to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, it was actually 2 tickets. Each of those tickets were ripped horizontally and then carefully pieced together to become one fraudulently altered ticket that now visually shows that it was a $1 million prize winner. Enders claimed the ticket had fallen out of her car and then it was rained on, and she pieced it back together when it started falling apart. But Jones allegedly admitted that they found 2 pieces on the ground about 50 yards apart. Both had been charged with forgery and grand theft and face up to 40 years in prison each. Wow, lotteries are a form of gambling, but apparently committing fraud is a far bigger gamble. And for the record, I'm a law and order kind of guy, so I don't believe in the cause of those who chant defund the police. So it dismays me when I hear stories like this one that add fuel to the fire. Miami Beach Police could be riding a new set of wheels soon as the department unveiled the world's first police luxury car. The department announced the first Rolls-Royce squad car. The new set of wheels is part of an effort to get people to join the police force, said Miami Beach Police Chief Wayne Jones. This is top of the line. This is the best you can get as far as it relates to vehicles. The police department is the best there is in the country. Recruiting police officers in this country today is a difficult thing to do. Using this car to help us do recruitment is gonna be great. Again, I don't want to defund the police, but if this is the kind of thing the Miami Beach Police deems worthy to spend their budget on, then I really would like to see their budget audited, because I'm kind of curious to see what else they're doing or what other perks are being offered in the name of recruitment. Anyway, let's get to our last guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Back in 2022, we talked to Bob Salem, who had just finished pushing a peanut up a mountain with his nose. He wasn't the first person to trek on his hands and knees over 14,000 feet up the slope. In fact, he was the fourth. But what about the first? Who has the origin story? For that, we touch base once again with Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, as this is the Weird Story for the month of May. Marc joins us via Skype from New York. So Marc, last month we talked about fingers, and this month it's noses.
Yeah, exactly. Noses and gadgets attached to noses. So this story, as you mentioned, this is about the first guy who pushed a peanut up Pikes Peak in Colorado. And this happened 95 years ago this month, so May of 1929. And it's a pretty amazing feat to pull off with your nose. The guy's name was Bill Williams, and he was from Rio Hondo, Texas, actually. And he accepted a bet for $500 from a group of his neighbors. And the bet was, could he push a peanut 22 miles up Pikes Peak? And Pikes Peak is a 14,115-foot mountain. And obviously, you got a pathway to get up there. He was given 22 days to achieve this feat. And that $500 he was going to get in 1929, as I said on my Weird Historian article, that was hardly peanuts. That was a pretty good payday. And again, that was right before the stock market crashed. So I'm sure that came in handy. Now, you might be wondering, why was a guy from Texas going up Pikes Peak, and how did he know that he could push a peanut 22 miles on a mountain with his nose? So this wasn't his first peanut pushing rodeo. This guy had actually guided a peanut 11 miles the previous fall. He lost a bet on the presidential election of 1928, where he had to push a peanut. But that success still of pushing the peanut, he lost the bet that forced him to push the peanut 11 miles. But it emboldened him, and he said, this was a quote from a newspaper, he said, "I can push a peanut any place." And so locals challenged him. They thought, well, how about Pikes Peak, this giant mountain? And Williams didn't flinch at that. He thought, yeah, I can do that. So he took the bet for $500. And, again, you're imagining, how is this guy actually doing this thing, right? So he armed himself with knee pads and canvas gloves, and he had a device he attached to his nose. It was this wire device strapped around his head and extending from his nose that helped him in pushing. The press had a lot of fun with this. Obviously, it was a bizarre sight, a weird situation, a real oddity. And one newspaper said, the device is widely heralded by peanut pushers as the very latest in propellers for peanuts. So I don't know if there were other peanut pushers, but, you get the idea that he had something pretty unique. And there's actually an image on the site. You can see that it kind of looks like it's almost like he had like an anteater snout. They would push this shelled peanut along the ground. And he brought backup peanuts as well, because pushing all those peanuts, they start to wear out a little bit on the journey. It's a long way up the mountain. So he had backup peanuts with him, as he crawled along this mountain in this little wire device pushing the peanut along the way. So that's a lot of physical stamina and a lot of dexterity trying to do this amazing endeavor. But he also had a lot of perils of nature to contend with. There were squirrels, and the squirrels were very curious. They were watching him, and that was a problem. That again, this was reported on. In fact, one reporter noted, I love this quote, they said the squirrels were of a more brazen and decidedly more inquisitive clan, who, quote, seemed to think the performance was being staged entirely for their benefits. So you can imagine these squirrels trying to, grab the peanut from him, and I'm guessing maybe a few succeeded, and he had the backups with him, which was helpful. So aside from squirrels watching him, he also had spectators, human spectators, presumably peanut allergy-free spectators, who were watching him mostly the first few hundred yards of the push. So they had all gathered for like the big, start to this event. And then there was a judge along with him who was there to make sure that he did this legitimately and that it was all honest. He didn't go pick up the peanut and walk a few yards or anything like that, that he was on all fours pushing the peanut with his nose the whole way. So it was all legit. Now, by the time he was done, he acknowledged that he was tired. He used a lot of muscles all day. The same thing. He said he was one big ache. But he basically did this, for a full day, basically about a mile a day. He would then take a rest. He could go back to a room at night and take a rest. He didn't sleep on the mountain, pick up where he left off, and continue on his trek.
I could imagine if Sisyphus had a peanut rather than a rock, life would have been better for him.
This is a bit like Sisyphus, a weird version of Bizarro Sisyphus, right?
Yeah.
Sisyphus never got the stop, which was tough.
True.
At least this guy Bill Williams, he actually finished it a day early, so he pulled off the feat in 21 days. So at least he did finish it, but he achieved his mission. He won his bet, which was pretty incredible.
Now, besides the squirrels, he had other issues with nature. Weren't there rainstorms and even a snowstorm?
Yeah, there were downpours of rain, which isn't too surprising at that time of year. But there was also a spring snowstorm. I'm actually from Colorado, so not totally unusual. I've actually seen it snow on the first day of summer in the mountains. But yes, he did face a spring snowstorm that hit about halfway up the hill. So he had to deal with that. But, he wasn't going to let this hold him back. This was his, as I said, it was his legume legacy. So he pulled through. He persevered. And like I said, he finished a day ahead of schedule. And that early finish, actually, I think he hurried the pace toward the end because there was a planned oil conference in Colorado Springs being, I guess, held by the Secretary of Interior at that time. And I think that they were trying not to have a distraction where all the conference is starting. They wanted the press to be covering that and not a guy finishing his peanut climb up Pikes Peak. So he finished a day early out of respect for the government so that they could have their own conference and that they could soak up all the press and not have to share it with a peanut pusher.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been happening today.
I don't think Bob Salem had to deal with that.
No, Bob did not have to deal with that. But he also did it in a shorter time. I think he did it in 14 days.
I saw 6 days and 20 hours. And again, that's just to clarify, that's only time pushing the peanut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He got to go down the mountain as well. But so
yeah.
You just mentioned you're from Colorado. This isn't something that was heralded throughout the state when you were growing up?
This was nothing I'd ever heard of growing up. I heard Pikes Peak, of course.
Right.
But pushing a peanut up it, no. That was not something that was talked about, at least not in my youth. But I kind of wish I knew about it. I would have loved knowing about that as a kid growing up. I love knowing about it now.
Well, I know you're not in Colorado anymore, but maybe you should head home, if only to drum up making, annual Pikes Peak Day in May.
That's true. That could be something for the next trip. I do love peanuts. I told you earlier I was eating some just before this call.
Well,
with my mouth, no pushing, just eating.
Yeah, another fascinating story from weirdhistorian.com. I thank you very, very much, Mark, for sharing this peanut story and the background to the story when I talked to the current record holder who's done it so many years later and in so fewer days. But now we know, as the saying goes, the rest of the story.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be able to share it, and thank you for telling me about this to begin with the Bob Salem story. I hadn't known about before then, so I loved looking into the background. This has been fun.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com. He's the author of several books, his most recent one being We Are Not Alone, The Extraordinary History of UFOs and Aliens Invading Our Hopes, Fears, and Fantasies. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0769, and you'll find the link to Mark's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. Also, if you would like to hear our chat with Bob Salem, the latest peanut proboscis pusher up Pikes Peak, again, you can go to our website and look for show number 0681 for that conversation. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And now, boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
An Iowa City man who voluntarily turned himself in on an arrest warrant faces other charges after allegedly bringing drugs in his car with him. 20-year-old Precious Nzoni reportedly turned himself in to the Coralville Police Department on February 21st on a second-degree robbery charge, arriving in a 2009 Audi and parking his car there. It was towed pending a search warrant. The warrant was secured and executed the next day. Officers allegedly located over 20 blue pills, $440 in cash commonly associated with drug transactions, nearly 3 grams of suspected marijuana, 3 pieces of aluminum foil with burnt residue, 2 rolled dollar bills with burnt residue, and a rolled index card also with burnt residue. The pills were sent for testing and determined to be fentanyl, and the marijuana was also positively identified. Nzoni was additionally charged with a Class C controlled substance violation, failure to affix drug stamp, whatever that is, marijuana possession, and possession of drug paraphernalia. If convicted on the additional charges, he faces up to another 16 years in prison. Now, why? Oh, why? If you're turning yourself into the cops, would you drive there in a car filled with drugs and drug paraphernalia? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0769. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com. And once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0769. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, TrueTalkRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WLSL-LP-FM in Dade City, Florida, KZZH-LP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. While it may be an enjoyable, pleasant experience, some side effects may occur. Listening to Peter may cause bloating, drowsiness, Tourette's, web feet, or an oily discharge.